United States to promote certainty, consistency, and continuity in government. After experiencing the failures of a weak government under the Articles of Confederation, delegates to the Constitutional Convention realized that a stronger national government was necessary to meet the needs of the growing nation and gathered in Philadelphia to create a more perfect union.
The rule of law states that every citizen, including government officials, is subject to the law. No person is above or below the law, theoretically establishing legal equality.
The rule of law was first exemplified in the Magna Carta in 1215, in which the English nobility asserted that the king was subject to English common law. The idea was again asserted in the English Petition of Rights in 1628. However, in both of these requests of the king, the rule of law had no merit because there was no authority to uphold it.
Again, in 1776, the British citizens living in the colonies attempted to assert the rule of law through the ideas expressed in the Declaration of Independence, citing the history of repeated injuries and usurpations of the King of England. But it wasn't until after the Revolution and the failure of the Articles of Confederation that the rule of law was able to be enforced. Unlike under the Articles of Confederation, the consolidated power of the national government under the new Constitution created the accountability necessary to uphold the rule of law. It established 3 independent branches to ensure that they could check the power of one another and included an impeachment process to apply the laws of the United States equally to government officials.
The basic guarantee of the rule of law is that all human beings are subject to the same laws and restrictions. Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution grants the federal courts the judicial power to uphold law and equity within the Constitution, laws, and treaties of the United States. In the 1803 Supreme Court case, Marbury v. Madison, Chief Justice Marshall asserted the judicial power to review executive and legislative actions, thus establishing the precedent that neither the President nor Congress is above the law and the Constitution.
However, that precedent is now being challenged by the congressional battle over funding the Affordable Care Act, which creates a separate standard for members of Congress and exempts them from the penalty tax that all of their citizens are subject to if they do not abide by the new health care mandate.
In the United States, the dedication to the rule of law ensures that all citizens are held accountable to the law. Harvey Whittemore, a multimillionaire from Nevada, was recently sentenced to 2 years in prison for making illegal campaign contributions to Senator Harry Reid, despite his
Officer Webb, you have a visitor who would like to talk to you in the office. Officer Webb, you have a visitor in the office.
For leaking classified documents, despite her status in the U.S. military. In these 2 examples, the rule of law applies equally to both Whittemore and Manning without regard to their social standing.
Although the rule of law is something that all people strive for, it is only well respected in countries in which it can be enforced. Because the United States has the ability to uphold the rule of law domestically through judicial review, balance of powers, and the impeachment process, its commitment to this principle is revered throughout the world.
China is a recent example of a nation moving to emulate the United States' commitment to the rule of law, as seen with the conviction of politician Bo Eli for corruption and abuse of power. In other nations throughout the world, such as Egypt and Libya, the democratic ideals of the United States and the enforcement of the rule of law appeal to citizens who have grown tired of oppression within their own countries.
Thank you.
How would you explain the rule of law to my 5-year-old daughter?
The rule of law is a law that everyone is subject to. So even the president has to abide by the rule of law.
So I'd probably explain it to her like, you're the president and you set the rules of the house, and you're not above the law and you're not below the law, and everyone in the house is to abide by the rules. Just because, you know, she's your child, she has to follow the rules just like you have to follow the rules. So everyone is not above or below anything that is set by the rule of law.
How would you explain the rule of law in terms of what's happening in Egypt today? Today, President Morsi went to court. He was democratically elected and then arrested after a coup. He has been deprived of access to a lawyer. So if the revolution in Egypt was to bring democracy to the fore, what's happening to the rule of law in Egypt?
I would say that in Egypt they don't have established rule of law. They don't have maybe higher law, which we have more as a constitution where we have something to abide by. Their perception of a rule of law is probably skewed, and they don't have anything to go off of. So
What impact would that have on your relation with the United States and vice versa?
our relationship with them, they probably look to our country and think about our government and the system that we have, and that's most likely why they have riots and why they're unhappy with their government, because they feel like they can't control, they don't have a say in their government, whereas they look to the United States and they see everything that we're able to do, but they don't have a precedent for what the rule of law is, so that doesn't happen.
After the Civil War, states could no longer secede. But right now, the state of Colorado is moving to elections, and part of Colorado wants to secede from its own state. What happens to the rule of law there?
When Colorado originally signed the document that made them a state, they have to abide by that law. And it's because Colorado does not, they think they're special, but although they don't have the power in the rule of law, because they're not higher than any of the other states or any of the other powers, they cannot secede. They can try to, but in the end, they do not think that they're possible.
Do you think that the United States has an aristocracy in which celebrities, those who are more educated, have more money, have a better chance of getting around convictions than those who are poor or don't necessarily know the law as well as others?
Yes, because people that are better educated or have more money, they can afford to buy a better lawyer, whereas people who are poor, they are still given a lawyer, but the lawyer may not be as,
Skilled?
skilled or experienced.
Such as Mr. Daniels, who is a defense attorney. He has a lot of experience in court, and he knows how to work the system very well. And whenever you talk to him, you can see that reflecting.
Are you saying then that the rule of law can be interpreted in different ways if someone can quote, work the system, unquote?
Yes, they've been experienced in that field. They know how their definition of the rule of law works, and because it's so vague that it can be bent.
In what way is it vague?
The rule of law applies to the rule of law states that every citizen, including government officials,
I
is
read it off in testimony, because you can't do that in a competition.
So, no person is above or below the law, is what the rule of law states.
I find that your comment interesting because in the paper that you've written, you talk about Mr. Whittemore, and yet he is going to jail for breaking a law that was a law then, but now, after the Supreme Court ruling on political contributions, he wouldn't have been considered having broken the law. So where does the rule of law apply to him then? Can you break a law that wasn't a law at the time you did it?
You guys have the answer to that. What's that
Yes.
called? What is it?
Just talked about this in class. Ex post facto. Ex post facto.
What is ex post facto?
It's where you could have done something that technically broke a law, and then you could still get convicted for it. Once the law is made.
Can be arrested for after the fact,
Yes.
and vice versa.
Mhm.
The law's in effect at the time you break it. If it goes away, you still can be convicted for it. Okay. Now, on part of that, he still would have been convicted for 2 accounts
Right,
because of the money thing, but part of it, the amount of money would be different.
right.
Couple things. I think you guys need to do more on how do America's founding documents express the nation's commitment to the rule of law. I don't think you do enough to truly answer that question. You talked about the Declaration of Independence and a little bit of the Articles of Confederation, but you don't pound it over the head in terms of answering that specific question. And my question to you is, what are America's founding documents? I can stop recording. Okay? You can stop that now.